They say you don't choose the life chooses you. But that's bullshit. I chose it. Every goddamn gear shift, every busted knuckle, every cigarette lit under a freeway overpass with men who had murder in their eyes and loyalty in their veins. I joined the Mongols because I didn't want to be invisible anymore. I wanted to matter. I wanted to be feared. And brother, I got more than I bargained for. The first time I killed a man, it wasn't in some glorious showdown on Route 66. It was in a piss-stained alley behind a bar in East LA. His name was Ricky Chains Torres, and he wore the red and white of the Hells Angels like it was armor. But that night, all the leather and patches in the world couldn't stop the bullet that slid through his neck like a whisper. He choked on his own blood, gurgling like a fucked up fountain, and I watched him die without blinking. That was the night I stopped being a prospect. That was the night I became one of them. We weren't always at war. There used to be rules, boundaries. The Angels stayed up north, mostly NorCal and Nevada. We ran SoCal, Arizona, parts of New Mexico. We sold meth, ran guns, handled security at outlaw events. We kept our own brand of order. But then 2002 happened. The Angels pushed south. It started small. A few bars switching allegiance. A few mechanics who stopped paying their dues to us and started hanging red and white banners. Then came the patchovers. Entire clubs flipping from neutral or even Mongol-aligned over to the Hells Angels. One by one, we started losing ground, losing respect. And in our world, respect is everything. Lose that, and you're dead before the bullet leaves the chamber. The president, at the time, Big Sal, wasn't having it. Sal had a face like roadkill and a temper like nitroglycerin. He called a meet at a truck depot outside Barstow, middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. Every Mongol lieutenant from San Diego to Tucson rolled in, dust trailing behind them like storm clouds. I was a full patch by then. I sat cross-legged on an overturned crate and listened as Sal laid out the war. "This ain't about territory," he growled, lighting a cigar with fingers thick as pork chops. "It's about pride. They think they can walk on us, piss on our patches, take our bars, our girls, our customers. They're wrong. I want blood, and I want it now." No one argued. That night, we burned down 2 strip clubs flying the Angels' colors. One in Temecula, the other in Lancaster. We didn't kill anyone, not yet, but we made our message clear. No more patchovers, no more negotiations. From that moment, it was war. The retaliation came fast. I was staying with my old lady, Rosa, in a cramped little apartment above a pawn shop in Boyle Heights. We weren't supposed to be staying anywhere too long. Heat was rising. But Rosa was pregnant, and I wanted her close. Maybe I thought I could shield her from all this. I was wrong. It was 3 a.m. when the windows blew in. Molotov cocktails through the glass, fire licking the walls before I even registered the sound. I grabbed Rosa, carried her half naked down the fire escape, my bare feet slicing open on rusted metal. She was screaming, clutching her stomach. I didn't even know if it was the baby or the fear. We lost everything. The fire took the building, the pawn shop, our cash, even my ride, a matte black Harley Dyna that had been with me through 10 states and 2 shootouts. The only thing I had left was vengeance. We hit them hard after that. Set up an ambush outside a biker rally in Laughlin. That night still haunts my dreams. The chaos, the screams, the sheer animal madness of it. I saw a man get stabbed in the eye with a broken pool cue. I saw another ripped off his bike mid-ride and dragged down the asphalt until his skull cracked like an egg. And I put 3 rounds into the chest of a man wearing red and white. watched him tumble into a ditch like a rag doll. I didn't even know his name. The feds tried to intervene. They raided a few clubhouses, made some arrests, but they didn't understand what they were dealing with. This wasn't some backwoods gang war. This was tribal, ancient, built on decades of hatred, betrayal, and blood. They couldn't stop it any more than a man can stop a flood with his hands. The deeper I got, the more I changed. I used to have dreams, I mean actual dreams, while sleeping. Now all I saw were the dead, faces twisted in agony, frozen in their last moments. Some of them I recognized, others I probably killed myself. They spoke to me, asked why, asked if it was worth it. And always I said yes, because by then it was too late to be anything else. I became someone else. I stopped caring about my old name, my old self. I was Razor now, a name earned when I slit open a Hell's Angel throat in a bathroom stall outside Flagstaff. That name bled into my skin like ink, deeper than any tattoo. But it wasn't just the killing, it was the waiting, the silence between gunshots, the paranoia, the knowing that someone, somewhere, was watching you. Maybe a fed, maybe a rival, maybe even a brother waiting for a promotion. Trust died first in this war. Then came love. Then hope. The only thing left was rage, and I had plenty of it. One night, we cornered a known angel enforcer named Buckley at a gas station in Riverside. We didn't plan it. It just happened. He was filling up, didn't even see us coming until the first bat cracked his ribs. He dropped like a sack of bricks, and the rest was just noise. Blood on the asphalt. Screams muffled by fists. By the time I looked down at my hands, they were covered in crimson, and Buckley wasn't breathing. No one said a word. We just got back on our bikes and rode off, engines screaming like banshees into the night. Later, we found out Buckley's younger brother was a prospect for the Mongols. The line between brother and enemy was beginning to blur, fast. We buried Buckley's death under miles of blacktop and silence. No one mentioned his name. No one wanted to ask the question we all knew was coming, who vouched for his brother. Because in our world, when blood gets spilled, someone's got to answer for it. And if that answer ain't good enough, somebody pays. 2 weeks later, his little brother Danny walked into the clubhouse in Ontario and never walked out again. It was supposed to be a routine meeting. Danny, just 19, still baby-faced despite the Mongol rocker on his back, sat quiet at the table, eyes darting around like a dog that knows it's about to get kicked. He didn't even try to explain himself. He just said, "I didn't know he was your hit, didn't matter." Big Sal stood up, pulled his sidearm, and put one in Danny's head before anyone could blink. The boy dropped like a sack of meat, brains and bones splattered across the Sons of Anarchy poster hanging behind him. We left the body there for a day. A message, loyalty above blood, always. After that, things got darker. We started moving in cells. No more clubhouse meets. No more big rides. We split into tight groups, 4, maybe 5 riders, max, ghost units. We'd ride into Angel territory, hit a stash house, a meth lab, a girl, whatever we could reach, and vanish before the red and white even knew we were there. But they were doing the same. The Angels weren't just fighting us with bullets. They fought us with rats, feds, judges. They had friends in suits and ties. We had friends with knives. Guess who usually wins that game? RICO charges started rolling in like tidewater. Our treasurer in Vegas went down. Then the Arizona VP. Then a full patch in Albuquerque who'd been with the club since before I was born. Each one flipped or fried. I started sleeping with one eye open, a Glock under my pillow and a sawed-off by the door. Then came the warehouse in El Monte. It was supposed to be a drug run, 5 bricks of uncut coke, 200K in cash, and a few ARS. We were moving east. I was with Roach, Snake, and Little G. We got to the warehouse around midnight. Door already open. That should have been the first sign. But we were too wired to think straight. High on adrenaline and paranoia. Living off fast food, meth, and nightmares. The ambush hit us like a freight train. First shot took Little G in the neck. He gargled, clawed at his throat, and collapsed. Snake returned fire, but it was too late. They had the high ground, thermals, night gear. Angels had leveled up. This wasn't bar brawling anymore. This was military-grade shit. I dragged Roach behind a stack of crates. He was bleeding from the thigh, crying, begging me not to leave him. I didn't. I shot him myself, put one in his heart to stop his screaming, to keep us both from being found. It was the cleanest mercy I could give. I slipped out through a sewer grate behind the warehouse, crawled through shit, rats, and broken glass for nearly an hour before I surfaced 5 blocks south. My vest was gone, my hands shredded. My soul, what was left of it, bleeding from holes I couldn't see. Back at Safe House, Sal was waiting. "You were supposed to watch them," he growled, not looking at me, just chewing on a toothpick, eyes locked on the static-filled TV. "They're dead," he nodded. "Then they're no longer your concern," just like that. No anger, no mourning, just protocol. I wanted to scream. I wanted to bash his face into the wall until he bled like Roach had bled. But I didn't, because Sal was the only thing between us and annihilation. And because deep down, I wasn't sure I even cared anymore. Rosa was gone by then, took the baby and disappeared. Can't blame her. Who the hell would want to raise a kid with a man who smells like gunpowder and wears death like cologne? I still saw her sometimes, driving by in the early morning, parking half a block down, just watching the apartment window where we used to live. I imagined her behind the curtain, holding our son or daughter, wondering if I was still alive. I wondered too. The Angels hit our stash house in Palmdale 2 weeks later. Left no survivors. We found them stacked like firewood. 7 bodies, hands zip-tied, shot execution style. They even took the goddamn microwave. Sal snapped. He called in every Mongol within 2 states. Told us we were going to hit back so hard they'd never forget the taste of their own blood. The target, a Hells Angels meet-up in Bakersfield. Word was they were gathering for a wedding. Real sentimental shit. Perfect. We rolled in with 30 deep, all patched, armed, armored. I'd never seen so many angry men in one place. Half of them high, the other half worse, sober and angry. No one spoke. We just rode. It was supposed to be surgical, quick, but you throw 30 wolves into a wedding and expect a clean kill. You're a fool. The shooting started before the first bottle broke. I saw a little girl, couldn't have been more than 8, covered in someone's blood, screaming for her dad. A man in a red vest tried to shield her and caught a shotgun blast to the back. I don't even know who fired it. By the time the sirens came, it was carnage. 15 dead, dozens wounded, the rest scattered. The news called it the Bakersfield Massacre. The newspapers ran pictures of corpses next to wedding cakes. We celebrated like it was 4th of July. But I didn't. I just stared at the blood on my boots and thought of my child. Thought of the little girl at the wedding. Thought of Buckley. Of Roach. Of the weight piling up on my chest like bricks. And I realized something chilling. I didn't feel a damn thing. Not guilt, not pride, not even fear, just numbness. Like the razor inside me had dulled, turned inward, cutting not enemies, but myself. And that was the moment I understood. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a slow suicide, wearing leather and riding chrome. After Bakersfield, the club changed. No more cheers. No more beer-soaked celebrations after a hit. We were winning on the outside, but rotting from the inside. You could feel it in the way we stared at each other, longer, colder, like we were all waiting for someone to flinch, and someone did. They called him Whisper, young guy, always quiet, always did what he was told, never complained, never asked questions. He'd been with us 3 years, earned his patch the hard way, smuggling guns from El Paso, nearly dying from dehydration once, after his truck broke down in the middle of the Mojave. Everyone trusted Whisper until he disappeared. 2 weeks later, 5 of our top earners got arrested on RICO charges in one sweep. No warning, no leaks, just boom, gone. I knew then. Whisper flipped. We found his car torched outside of Santa Clarita, but the body inside wasn't his. Too tall, too old, a decoy. And then came the worst part. Sal's voice on the burner phone, brittle with rage. We got a Judas. From that point on, no one was safe. Sal started doing surprise loyalty checks. You'd be out on a run, stop for a piss, and 3 guys in masks would pull you into a van and beat the truth out of you. It wasn't personal, it was survival. That's when I started keeping a kill list. Names, dates, signs of weakness, just in case. Because I knew it was coming the day I'd either be the shooter or the shot. I had to be ready for both. My closest brother, Leon, we called him Crater, because half his face looked like it had been blasted open and patched up with shoe leather, started drinking too much. Not that any of us were sober, but Crater, man, he got mean. Started snapping at prospects, pulling guns at parties. He even roughed up a club girl once, cracked her nose for spilling beer on his vest. That was enough. One night, I found him outside the baker's bar, slouched against his bike, bottle of Jack in one hand, tears in his eyes. She was just a kid, Razor, he said. At that wedding, 8, maybe 9. I didn't answer. He looked up at me. We used to have a code. I nodded, then I pulled my piece and shot him in the chest. Twice. Not because I wanted to, but because hesitation is death in our world. Crater wasn't going to make it, and I wasn't going to let him take me down with his guilt. The next morning, Sal said nothing, just patted my shoulder and passed me a new burner. But the silence was deafening. I started thinking about Whisper, about where he'd gone. Feds were protecting him, obviously, but I didn't think he'd run. No, Whisper was too smart, too vindictive. He was planning something. Then, one by one, our routes started getting hit. Gun runs in the desert intercepted. Meth shipments in Phoenix busted before they even left. Clubhouses raided like the feds had blueprints. We had a mole, but Whisper wasn't the only rat. I could feel it. I started watching everyone, the way they spoke, what they didn't say, every handshake that lingered too long, every meeting that got rescheduled. I didn't trust anyone, not even myself. One night, I caught Spider, a mid-level guy from the Albuquerque crew, talking on a payphone behind the liquor store off Pico. I followed him. He didn't notice. Saw him pass something off to a guy in a silver SUV. Too clean to be one of ours. Too nervous. Later that night, I slashed Spider's tires and waited. When he came out, I put a blade to his throat. Talk. He pissed himself. I'm just trying to get out, he whispered. I've got a kid, man. They offered me a deal. Witness protection. New name. I shoved the blade deeper into his neck, just enough to feel it cut. And what did you give them? Names. Drops. The Vegas pipeline, please. I finished him right there. Left his body in the alley for the rats. Just another junkie, far as anyone else would see. But something was wrong. A week later, I was called to meet Sal, alone, at an old diner out in Fontana. He looked tired, skin grey, eyes glassy like old marbles. You shouldn't have killed Spider, he said. I blinked. He was a rat. Sal shook his head. He was feeding them bad intel, fake roots, a decoy we were using him. The world stopped. I'd killed our inside man. You cost us the Phoenix run, Sal growled. You cost us leverage. I wanted to puke. My hands started shaking, not from fear, from shame. Then Sal leaned in. You're slipping, Razor. That was the first time I ever truly felt fear. When I left that diner, I didn't go home. I didn't go to Rosa. I rode out to the edge of the Mojave and just sat there for hours. No music, no smokes, just wind and regret. That night, I dreamt of Whisper. He was standing in front of my kid, my son, holding him by the shoulders. You took everything from me, he said. I tried to move, but I was paralyzed. All I could do was watch, and then he slit my kid's throat right in front of me. I woke up screaming. That was the moment I knew. This war wasn't about turf anymore. It wasn't about pride, not even revenge. It was about who could survive the longest without losing their soul. And I was already half dead. I didn't go back to the clubhouse after that night. The dream, the fear, everything, it was like a switch had been flipped in my brain. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Was it the war, the betrayal, or was it the feeling of myself becoming something darker every time I looked in the mirror? The same Razor, but twisted, burned out, and hollow. I needed to get out, just for a little while. So I disappeared into the desert for a few days, riding at night, barely sleeping, surviving on the edge like a wild animal. I couldn't think about it, the weight of it, all the bodies, the deals, the names I had to forget, but I couldn't escape the phone calls. Every few hours, my burner would buzz with one of Sal's lieutenants. They all had the same message. Sal wants to talk, but I already knew what it was about. Whisper the rat. The man I'd failed to stop. I finally rode back into town just before dawn, feeling the heat of the desert still clinging to my skin. The sun hadn't even risen yet, and there was a feeling of dread in the air, like the whole damn city was holding its breath. I pulled up to the clubhouse parking lot, but something was wrong. The usual motorcycles weren't there. No one was hanging around. No loud music blaring from the doors. It was quiet, too quiet. Sal was waiting for me inside. His chair was tilted back, fingers steepled together, staring at me like he already knew I had failed. I knew he was going to blame me for Whisper, for Spider, for the goddamn war falling apart around us. But when I walked in, Sal didn't say anything. He just waved me over to the back table where a burner phone was sitting. My gut dropped as I sat down and picked it up. The voice on the other end wasn't Sal's. Razor, a familiar voice, crackled, thick with arrogance. It's Whisper. I clenched the phone so tight, my knuckles turned white. You're alive, was all I managed to get out. My voice low, dangerous. Barely, Whisper said, his voice dripping with contempt. But I'm better than you, Razor. I'm smarter than you. I've always been. Where the hell are you? I asked through gritted teeth. My blood was boiling. Every word from his mouth stoked the fire. I'm not where you think. Not anymore. I've been working the other side this whole time. You're a pawn. You always were, he spat. But you're still too blind to see it. It hit me then. I was out of control. Sal was out of control. The Mongols were crumbling under our feet, and we had no idea how deep the betrayal ran. I did everything for the club, I said, voice shaking with a cold fury. I killed my brothers. I kept my hands clean for years, and now you tell me I'm just a pawn. There was silence for a long time, and when Whisper spoke again, his voice was a deadly calm. You weren't the only one who made sacrifices. You weren't the only one in this game. But you can keep playing if you want. There's still a seat at the table. You just have to earn it. I slammed the phone down onto the table, shattering it into pieces. My vision blurred with anger. Whisper had already crossed the line, turned us all into pieces of a game that only he was playing. And the worst part, he was right. Sal's voice cut through my anger, sharp like a blade. Get up, Razor. I turned to him, fists clenched, blood still boiling. I'm going after him. Sal didn't flinch. He didn't even look up from the map spread across the table. You don't have to go. We're already tracking him. I blinked, confused. You knew. Of course, I knew. Sal leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. But I needed you to learn. You've been blind too long. He stood up and walked over to me, placing a hand on my shoulder, the weight of it heavy. I need you sharp, Razor. Focus. Whisper thinks he's the smartest one in the room, but he's just another dead man walking. That was the moment I realized something terrible. Sal had known about the betrayal. He had known about Whisper, the rats, the leaks, and everything we'd been dealing with. He had been playing a game of his own one I was too stupid to see. I didn't trust him. I didn't trust anyone. But Sal had a plan, and for now, that was all that mattered. Sal's plan was ruthless. We were going to hit Whisper where it hurt the most: his family. His sister had been living in a quiet suburban neighborhood up north, far away from the chaos. She had no idea what was coming for her. It was a cold, calculated strike. We'd burn everything Whisper loved, make him watch as his world crumbled into ashes. I didn't like it. Hell, I hated it. But I had to do it. We rode out in the dead of night, a dozen deep, the sound of our engines shaking the night air like a low growl. It was a 2-hour ride to her house, each second dragging like a year. I couldn't stop thinking about how far we'd fallen. How many times had I crossed the line? How many more before I couldn't go back? When we arrived, we saw her house in the distance, peaceful, calm, the lights of the porch flickering like a cruel joke. We could hear her voice through the walls, soft like a whisper. I didn't know if I could go through with it. But then I heard the order. Burn it. We kicked in the door and torched the place. The fire burned hot, lighting up the whole block. I stood there, watching the flames curl and twist like some kind of living thing, eating everything in its path. Whisper's sister's house was gone, reduced to ash in a matter of minutes. I could hear the crackle of burning wood, the faint screams from inside as we left her life behind. I didn't feel a damn thing. I wasn't sure if it was the adrenaline or the numbness creeping in. But when the last embers died down, all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. A part of me wanted to turn around, go home, and forget all this shit. But that part was dead now. All that was left was Razor, the machine. Sal didn't speak as we turned our bikes around. He never did after a hit. I could feel his eyes on me, though, like he knew something I didn't. something I wasn't ready to face. We rode back to the clubhouse in silence. Not even the sound of the engines could break it. When we got there, Sal called the meeting. He wanted all of us in the back room. As usual, I was the first one to walk in. I wasn't afraid of the others anymore. Not even Sal. Hell, I wasn't sure what I was anymore. Standing in that room, waiting for the others to filter in. The door creaked, and one by one, the men who'd followed Sal for years took their seats. They all looked tired, haunted, like me, but none of them would admit it. Sal sat at the head of the table. His fingers drummed slowly on the wood, his eyes scanning us all like we were a puzzle piece he was trying to figure out. Tonight, he said, his voice low, controlled, was just the beginning. We hit Whisper where it hurt most, his family, but that's not enough. Not by a long shot. I knew what he meant. We'd just put a target on our backs. We weren't going to get away with this. Not after we went after someone's blood. Whisper would be coming for us, and he'd bring the whole damn weight of the feds with him. I could already hear the sirens in my head. I'm putting together a crew, Sal continued, his eyes narrowing as he looked at each of us. Razor, you're going to lead it. I wasn't surprised. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't the best choice, but I was the one Sal trusted most now. What do we do? I asked, keeping my voice steady. We're going to make them pay. We're going to burn everything they've built. There'll be nothing left for them to come back to. Sal's words were cold, and they echoed in my chest like a drumbeat. He wasn't talking about just Whisper anymore. He was talking about the whole damn Mongol operation. He wanted to tear it down, grind it into dust. And that meant every single person we came across was a potential target. But there was a catch. We're going after everything, every safe house, every stash house, every piece of real estate. If they think they can hide, they're wrong. We'll wipe them off the map, Sal said, the fire in his eyes hotter than the blaze we'd left behind. I nodded. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a bloodbath. Over the next few days, I gathered the crew, a mix of old heads and younger guys who had proven themselves in the streets. Some had patched in through the back door, others had earned their colors the hard way. But every single one of them was ready to follow orders. They were hungry for power, for revenge, for survival. We moved quickly. Strike teams were sent out in waves, hitting everything in sight. The safe houses were cleared first. No witnesses, no exceptions. Then came the stash houses, the weapons caches. Every inch of territory that whispered Mongols was set on fire, bombed or raided. We hit them where it hurt most, their money. But in the middle of all this chaos, something shifted. I could feel it in the air, like static before a storm. The club was becoming a machina, relentless soul-sucking force, and I wasn't sure if I could stay in it anymore. I had always told myself that loyalty was everything. Loyalty to the club, loyalty to Sal, loyalty to the Brotherhood. But when we stormed into a safe house in East LA, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The Mongols were gone, but the house wasn't empty. A single man was left behind, hands tied, eyes wide with fear. He was no older than 20, his clothes ripped, his face covered in bruises. I didn't know him. He didn't know me, but when I saw the patch on his back, I realized the horrible truth. He wasn't Mongol. He was a prospect, a goddamn kid, thrown to the wolves, left to die for a cause he didn't understand. The kid's eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw myself in him. Years ago, when I was just a kid with a dream to be part of something bigger, part of something real. I didn't want to do it, but I had to. He was a witness. He knew too much. I pulled my gun, aimed it at his chest, and told him to beg for his life. But the kid didn't beg. He just stared at me, unblinking. "I'm sorry, man," I whispered, feeling the weight of the decision crush my chest. And then, without a second thought, I pulled the trigger. The shot rang out like a final, painful echo. As his body crumpled to the floor, I felt nothing. Just a sinking feeling in my stomach, like a hole was opening up inside me. I woke up to the sound of ringing. It wasn't the sound of a phone. It wasn't the hum of the club. It wasn't even the sound of my own breath. It was the ringing in my ears. The kind you get when you've done something so bad that it cuts through the fog of your own mind and you can't escape it. You can't get away from the sounds, the faces, the screams. They follow you, they haunt you. I had spent the last 2 days locked in my room, thinking about the kid I'd shot. His face never left my mind. It replayed every time I closed my eyes. Every time I tried to sleep, I could feel the weight of his eyes staring at me, the pleading in them. I didn't know his name, didn't know if he had a family. Hell, I didn't even know if he was really Mongol. I was losing it. But there wasn't time to dwell on that. The knock on the door cut through the silence. I didn't answer, but it came again harder this time. Bang, bang, bang. I knew who it was. Razor Sal's voice growled through the door. "Get your ass up. We have a problem." I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to fade into the shadows and forget everything. But Sal didn't give a shit about my problems. And the Mongols, they sure as hell weren't going to forget about what we did to them. I stood up, rubbed my face, and walked to the door. The moment I opened it, I saw Sal's face. He was grim, his eyes dark like he'd seen the devil himself. "Whispers hit back," he said, as if that was enough to explain everything. I didn't need an explanation. I already knew the Mongols didn't let things slide. Whisper wasn't some weak link. He was like a shadow, always watching, always planning. He would have been waiting for us to make the first move. And now, he was coming for us with everything he had. Sal didn't waste time. He tossed a phone onto the table and sat down. "I just got word," he said, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying something darker. "Whispers put a hit on the clubhouse. They're coming for us. Hard." I wasn't surprised. When you kill someone's family, when you burn down their world, there's no turning back. The Mongols weren't going to stop until every last one of us was dead or buried. "We need to hit them first," Sal said, his eyes narrowing. "We can't wait around and play defense. We have to take the fight to them, right now." I felt my pulse quicken. This was it. We had been waiting for the war to come to us. Now it was finally here, and there was no escaping it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had been in too many battles to count, but this felt different. It felt personal. "Tell me where to go," I said, already reaching for my gear. Sal smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a man who was happy. It was the kind of smile you give when you know you're about to step into hell. "East LA," he said, tossing a map onto the table. "We've got intel. Whisper's been hiding out in a warehouse there. It's protected. He's got a small army with him. But if we hit hard and fast, we can take him out before he even knows what's happening." I grabbed the map and studied it. The warehouse was isolated easy enough to get to, but once we were in, we'd be trapped. There were too many variables, too many things that could go wrong. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, trying to keep the doubt out of my voice. Sal didn't answer right away. He just stared at the map, his eyes flicking from the details to me, as if he were making some silent calculation. Then he nodded. We don't have a choice. We hit them now, or we'll be dead before the end of the week. The decision was made. We suited up, gathered the crew, and hit the road under the cover of night. Our bikes rumbled through the streets, the sound like the warning growl of an animal on the hunt. The city was quiet, but I knew that wouldn't last for long. As we pulled up to the warehouse, I could feel the tension in the air. It was thick, like the calm before a storm. But there was something else too, something darker. A smell in the air that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I knew what it was. Fear. The Mongols were here, and they were ready for war. We parked our bikes behind a few abandoned trucks, making sure we weren't seen. We moved in fast, no chatter, no distractions. Every man knew what had to be done. This wasn't just about killing Whisper anymore. This was about surviving, about sending a message. As we approached the warehouse, the faint glow of lights from inside illuminated the darkened street. We could hear voices, low murmurs, the unmistakable sound of weapons being loaded. Sal motioned for us to take position. I was at the front, my hand resting on the cold steel of my gun, my heart pounding in my chest. The plan was simple: get in, get to Whisper, and get out. Fast. I wasn't ready for what happened next. As we entered the warehouse, everything went to hell. The lights flickered, and suddenly the entire place erupted in gunfire. The Mongols had been waiting for us. The chaos was overwhelming. Bullets whizzed past my ears. Men dropped, screaming in agony. The warehouse was filled with the stench of sweat, fear, and gunpowder. I could barely see through the smoke and dust, but I could hear it whisper was here, somewhere, watching, waiting. I moved forward, gun raised, scanning the shadows. Then I saw him, Whisper. He was standing at the far end of the room, calm as ever, his eyes cold and calculating. He wasn't even sweating. It was like he had known we were coming all along. I pulled the trigger without thinking. The bullet missed. And that's when I realized this was his game all along. The world seemed to slow down the moment I missed that shot. I watched as Whisper stepped out from the shadows, the calm in his demeanor cutting through the chaos around us. The noise of gunfire, the screams of dying men, it all faded into the background. All that was left was him, Whisper, the man who turned a simple gang into a goddamn empire, a man who made everyone who crossed him regret it before they even knew what hit them. I couldn't understand it, why he wasn't scrambling like the others, why he wasn't afraid. But that's when I realized it wasn't fear that drove him, it was control. He had control. Did you really think you could just walk in here and take what's mine, Razor? Whisper's voice cut through the fog of battle, steady and cold. I didn't answer. There was no point in answering. He knew why we were here. He knew we wanted him dead. But what I didn't understand was why he didn't seem surprised. It was like he'd been waiting for us all along. The firefight had spread throughout the warehouse by now. My men were pinned down. The Mongols were everywhere, hidden in every corner, popping up like ghosts. But Whisper, he didn't move. He just watched, like he was waiting for the right moment to strike. And then I saw it, the trap. They were closing in on us. Every exit had been blocked. The only way out now was through them. They'd lured us in, and we'd taken the bait. I had to make a decision fast. I couldn't let this drag on. If we didn't get out soon, none of us would make it. I signaled to my men, giving them the signal to retreat. But we were too deep in. The Mongols had set up a perfect ambush. Every path we tried to take was met with fire. I heard Sal yelling from behind me, trying to get a clear shot. But then a bullet hit him in the chest. He dropped like a sack of bricks. The scream that tore out of his throat was something I'd never forget. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't afford to lose focus. Sal was a casualty in a game where none of us were safe. The second you hesitated was the second you died. Get to the back. I shouted to the crew, shoving them toward the narrow alley behind the warehouse. We fought our way through, but the Mongols were relentless. It wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for pride. Every step I took felt like I was sinking deeper into something I could never climb out of. But then I saw something that made my stomach turn. Sal wasn't dead. Not yet. He was lying in a pool of blood, gasping for air, trying to hold his chest together with shaking hands. His eyes met mine, pleading for help. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't help him. We were too exposed. I could feel the heat of Whisper's eyes on me as I turned my back on Sal. He wasn't looking at me with hate. He was looking at me like he already knew what I was going to do. Like he had all of us figured out from the start. I didn't even hear the shot that hit me. It wasn't until I felt the sharp, burning pain in my side that I knew I'd been hit. The blood spread fast, soaking into my clothes, but I didn't stop running. I couldn't. I wasn't going to die here not like this. The pain was unbearable, but I pushed through it. The coldness in my chest was worse than any injury I'd ever sustained. The real pain was knowing that I had no way out. We had started this war, and now we were stuck in it. There was no escaping the aftermath. We made it to the back alley, but the Mongols were already there, waiting for us. They had cut off our only escape. I turned to face the men with me. They were scared, eyes wide, holding on to whatever they could. Some clung to their weapons, others to their lives. "Get out," I rasped, barely able to get the words out. "Find a way out of here. Go." But none of them moved. They were all in it now, just as much as I was, and no one left anyone behind. Not in this life. We stand together. That was the creed. That was the law. But I wasn't sure if I could stand anymore. My vision was blurring. Blood trickled from my side, staining the ground beneath me. My legs were giving out, but I couldn't stop moving. Then I saw them, Mongols. They were coming, guns raised. Whisper was behind them, calm, calculating, a man in control of everything. It was clear now, this wasn't just a gang war. This wasn't just about territory. This was about who could survive long enough to make the other bend to their will. I wasn't going to bend, but I didn't know if I could break free either. Whisper was getting closer, and I knew I was running out of time. My crew was scattered, but they were fighting with everything they had. I couldn't let them down. "Razor." The voice rang out like a lifeline. It was Sal. He was still alive. Barely, but alive. I turned, seeing him struggling to stand up. Blood dripped down his face, but there was fire in his eyes. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice hoarse but filled with a kind of defiance I hadn't seen in him before. I nodded, but I knew this wasn't something we could win by force. Whisper had outplayed us. The Mongols were too organized, too prepared. And that's when it hit me. We had to make a choice. We couldn't keep fighting this war the way we had been. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about who could keep their soul intact. Whisper had us cornered, but if we were going to survive, we needed to make a deal. We needed to find a way out of this, because one thing was clear. The Hells Angels weren't going to win this fight alone. "Sal, call the truce." I said it before I could stop myself. Sal looked at me, his eyes wide. "What?" "Call the goddamn truce," I repeated, blood spitting from my mouth. "Before we all die here." The world was spinning. I could feel the blood pooling around my boots, the weight of the fight pressing down on me. My vision blurred, my thoughts scattered. Sal's voice still echoed in my ears, but it felt distant now, like I was hearing him from miles away. "Call the truce, Razor," he had said. But there was no way out, no easy way to stop what had started. I felt like I had been swallowed whole by the war, the Mongols, the Hells Angels, and everything in between. It was all a blur now, a cycle of violence and betrayal that had no end. The air was thick with gunpowder and blood, and I knew the odds were stacked against us. Sal's words were like a last thread of hope, but I wasn't sure if I had the strength left to hold on to it. Was this even a fight worth winning anymore? Or had we crossed a line where no truce would ever be possible? The Mongols weren't just men. They were a force, an unstoppable tide that swept through everything in its path. And Whisper, he wasn't just a man either. He was something worse, something calculated, something who always seemed to be 2 steps ahead. I stumbled forward, my legs barely able to carry me. The pain in my side was sharp, but it had become a dull roar, a constant reminder of the cost of everything. And then I saw him, Whisper. He was standing in the shadows, watching us, calm and poised like nothing had changed. It was as if he knew, as if he had always known, that this was how it would end. Not with a bang, but with a choice. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like a force of nature. I could feel the tension crackling in the air. The Mongols around me were waiting for the signal. They were ready to end this, but I wasn't ready to die. Not yet. Razor, Whisper said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You think you can run, think you can hide. It's too late for that. Your men are dead. Your club is finished. There's only one way this ends." I felt the words like a punch to the gut. I had no answer for him. I wasn't sure I could even speak. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I could see Sal, bloodied but alive, still standing beside me. But for how much longer? "We can end this now," Whisper continued, taking a step forward. His voice was almost soothing, like he was trying to make me an offer. "You give up, you walk away. I promise no more bloodshed. I'll let you leave with your life." His offer hung in the air like poison. I knew what he was asking. He wasn't just offering peace, he was offering control. If I agreed, he would win. He would have broken us, destroyed everything we stood for, and I would be nothing but a coward in the eyes of everyone who had ever trusted me. But was that a price I was willing to pay? Was it worth giving up everything for the chance to survive? I looked at Sal, his eyes locked with mine. His face was pale, but there was no fear in him, only defiance. "Razor," he said, his voice low, "don't do it. We fight, we die, together." But I knew the truth. Sal was already gone. We all were. The war wasn't just between the Mongols and us anymore. It was between who we had been and who we had become. And that man, the one who'd joined the Hells Angels for the thrill of it, the one who had killed without hesitation, that man no longer existed. He had died in this warehouse. He had died the moment we decided to start this war. I turned to Whisper. He wasn't waiting anymore. His gun was raised, aimed straight at my chest. "I told you, Razor," he said, the finality in his voice like a death sentence. "This is where it ends." I didn't move. I couldn't. The world had already started to fade out. But then, something unexpected happened. Before I could react, I heard the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. Whisper's head snapped back, and he fell to the ground, dead before his body even hit the floor. A silence hung in the air, a stunned disbelief that spread across the room like a ripple. I didn't know what to think, what to feel. The pain in my side flared again, and I stumbled, barely able to keep my balance. And then I saw him. Sal. He was the one who had pulled the trigger. Sal wasn't dead. Not yet. But he wasn't the same man I had known. There was no longer anything human in him. He had become the monster we had fought against. He walked towards me, his gun still smoking in his hand. Whisper thought he had all the answers, Sal said, his voice cold. But he didn't. He didn't see this coming. I could feel the weight of what had just happened. It wasn't just a victory. It wasn't even revenge. It was the end of everything. And yet, somehow, Sal had won. The Mongols had lost their leader. The Hells Angels had lost their soul. And as the dust settled in the warehouse, I realized the truth. We were both lost.